If you're thinking about building on Longboat Key, there are 10 things you absolutely need to know before you buy a lot, sign a contract, or even fall in love with a set of plans. These are not obvious items. These are hidden details that can make or break your timeline and your budget. To understand them, you are going to be in a far better position to build with confidence. I'm Gina Ursini with Brista Realty. And if you don't know already, my husband is Mark Ursini. He is the owner of Brista Homes. Now, because I handle all of his interior and exterior design selections for his spec homes, I know firsthand what true quality is. Now, Mark is known for his quality construction, and that experience gives me a clear understanding of what buyers should pay attention to when shopping for new builds on Longboat Key. So let's jump in. Here are 10 things that most buyers never hear about, but absolutely should know about before starting new construction on Longboat Key. Now let's start with property taxes. Most buyers do not realize how dramatically taxes can shift during the construction process. Now, when you buy vacant land, you are only paying taxes on the land itself. There is no structure on the property. But once you build a structure, the county is going to reassess your taxes and you're going to pay an increased amount. That amount can be about 1.5% of the purchase price. This is not a surprise you want to discover after you close on a lot. It is something every buyer should be aware of. The same applies when purchasing a tear down. You are paying for the structure on that lot, but once you tear it down, what you want to do is call the county and let them know of the tear down, and they're going to reevaluate your taxes. You want to make sure you are only paying for what is truly there. But taxes are just the beginning. The biggest surprise can be hidden beneath the soil, which brings us into our next topic. Soil testing. On Longboat Key, soil testing is not just essential, it is required. Every lot, whether it's vacant or a teardown, is required to undergo a professional soil test to determine the strength and the stability of the ground beneath it. Now, barrier islands have unique soil conditions, and understanding what you're building on can save you time, stress, and significant money. Some areas of the island have weaker or more organic soil layers. So if the testing shows the soil cannot support a new structure on standard footers, the structure will require pilings. These are deep foundation supports that carry the load of the home down to the stronger layers below the surface. Pilings are common in coastal construction, and knowing whether you need them up front helps to avoid surprises. And if you're wondering whether your lot will require pilings and how much that adds to the budget, stay with me because that is where things get interesting. The testing process itself is very straightforward. A geotechnical engineer brings in equipment to bore into the ground at several points on the property. Those samples are then evaluated for density, moisture, composition, and load-bearing capacity. The results determine whether a traditional stem wall construction is appropriate or whether pilings will be required to safely support the home. Soil testing typically ranges from $2,500 to about $3,000, but this is a small investment compared to the cost of pilings, which can run around $75,000 or higher depending on the size of the home. And because these findings can impact both budget and design, soil testing should always be completed during your contract's due diligence period. That way, if the soil reveals surprises that materially change the budget or the design, you have the option to back out of the contract. So once you've handled what is beneath the surface, let's talk about something completely different. Home selections and lead times. Most buyers do not realize just how many decisions go into building a home on Longboat Key. It's not just about choosing cabinetry and flooring or countertops. It's every detail, right down to the doorstops, the outlet covers, and the finish on each hinge. Now, the number of selections can add up quickly, and it takes more time and attention than most people will anticipate. And I'm going to be honest, even with all my years of experience, I've had moments where the process felt overwhelming, and I would make a quick decision I later wished I thought through more carefully. That's why having a designer involved can be so valuable. They help you see the bigger picture, so you don't look back and think, I should have did this differently. Now, another surprise might be the lead time on many of these items. Custom cabinetry, specialty stone, impact windows, appliances, and designer fixtures can be months out. So, if selections are not made early, the entire construction timeline can be pushed back. This is one part of the process you truly do not want to procrastinate on. As a buyer, you should also understand the overall timeline from design to completion between architectural plans, permitting, selections, and the actual build. The entire process can take close to 2 years. It's an exciting journey for sure, but it does require patience. Now, in my next week's video, I am going to walk you through a beautiful new construction home so you can see some of the current design trends on Longboat Key. Once you've wrapped your head around the design process, there is another layer buyers often do not anticipate: the role of the HOA. Now, most buyers are surprised to learn that even though Longboat Key has its own set of building requirements, the Homeowners Association can impose rules that are far more specific. And when the two conflict, the HOA guidelines take precedence. These restrictions can cover everything from roof overhangs and setbacks to landscaping requirements and even the minimum size of a home. This is why reviewing the community's architectural guideline during your due diligence period is recommended. It ensures that the home you want to build aligns with what the neighborhood will approve. Doing this up front can save you weeks of redesigns, additional engineering costs, and the frustration of learning that certain design elements simply are not permitted, even if they meet Longboat Key's requirements. So in short, Longboat Key sets the baseline, but the HOA sets the tone. And when you're building a home in a deed-restricted community, the HOA does have the final say. Now, while the HOA shapes the look of your home, the next factor can impact the structure itself, especially on the waterfront. Let's talk about seawalls. Many buyers do not realize how significant the cost of a seawall can be when building in Longboat Key. If you're purchasing a waterfront lot, especially a teardown, the condition of the seawall is just as important as the condition of the land itself. A failing or aging seawall can't properly support the soil or the dock, and replacing one is a major investment. Signs of a failing seawall include potholes forming along the wall, cracks in the cap, and cracks in the vertical panels. Now, these issues often start small, but they signal deeper structural concerns beneath the surface. And once that integrity is compromised, repairs can quickly escalate into a full replacement. Longboat Key, seawall replacement typically starts at around $60,000 to $80,000 for a smaller canal property and can climb well over $100,000 depending on the length of the wall. Then when you have corners and curves and older concrete walls with extensive deterioration, that can push the cost even higher. So when you're purchasing a waterfront property, inspecting the seawall once again during your due diligence period is essential. A structurally sound seawall protects your investment, supports the longevity of your dock and lift, and ensures the stability of the entire waterfront portion of the property. Now, knowing its condition up front allows you to plan for and budget for any needed repairs or a full replacement before construction begins. Working with an agent who understands waterfront construction is critical. Otherwise, you could close on a property only to discover that you need new pilings and a new seawall. And that is an unexpected expense that can easily exceed $200,000 and dramatically impact your overall building budget. Once the seawall is addressed, the next major consideration for any waterfront build is flood elevations. Longboat Key recently adopted new base flood elevations, but building to the new lower required height can actually save you money. Under the old FEMA maps, many properties required a base flood elevation of 10 feet, but under the new maps, that requirement has dropped to 8 feet. Those 2 feet make a big difference. The previous standards forced homes to sit much higher, which meant more fill, taller stem walls, and additional stairs, and in some cases, more engineering. With the updated elevations, the required finished floor height is not nearly as extreme, and that reduction can translate into meaningful construction savings. It also changes the look of the home. With the older elevation requirements, many of our Brista home builds had longer staircases leading up to the front door. But under today's guidelines, that same style of home can be designed with far fewer stairs. And speaking of elevations, there is a key document required to prove your home meets elevation standards, and many buyers do not know about it. You're going to actually need two of these, and it is called an elevation certificate. A lot of buyers do not realize that they are going to need an updated elevation certificate before they can close out on a new build on Longboat Key. This is not a one and done document. You're going to need a pre-construction elevation certificate at the start of the project to verify that the existing site conditions and guide the required finished floor height. Then, before you receive your final certificate of occupancy, also known as a CO, the town requires a second updated elevation certificate confirming that the home was built to the proper elevation. It is a small detail in the grand scheme of construction, but it's one that can hold up your final CO if you are not prepared. Make sure your surveyor is scheduled early and again toward the end of the project. This keeps the process moving smoothly and avoids any unnecessary delays. Now, once the elevation paperwork is in order, there is another coastal requirement that buyers often overlook, and it comes into play the moment the sun goes down. Turtle light requirements. If you're building a home along the waterfront on Longboat Key, the turtle safe lighting is something you're going to need to plan for. Longboat Key enforces strict lighting regulations from May 1st through October 31st. This is the official sea turtle nesting season. And during these months, any exterior lighting visible from the beach must be turtle compliant. The reason is this: hatchlings navigate by the natural light reflecting off the Gulf. Bright white lights from the beachfront homes can disorient them, drawing them inland instead of toward the water. So to protect these endangered species, the town requires that all waterfront homes use fixtures and bulbs that minimize the risk. This often means using warm amber lighting or shielding fixtures so that the bulbs are not visible from the beach, or choosing window treatments that help reduce interior light spill. Even landscape lighting and pool lighting may need to be turned off during turtle season. For buyers, it is something that can feel unfamiliar at first, but once they understand the purpose of keeping these extraordinary creatures safe, it becomes a meaningful part of living on Longboat Key. And when planned early, it's easy to integrate into the design without sacrificing beauty or functionality. And turtles are not the only thing Longboat Key protects. The town is just as meticulous when it comes to tree removal. Longboat Key has very clear regulations when it comes to landscaping and tree removal, and they're more detailed than most buyers expect. If you're planning new construction or a major renovation, you can't simply just clear a lot and start fresh without tree permits and permission to remove trees within the footprint of your home. The town carefully protects its native trees and vegetation, which means any removal, even trees you might consider a nuisance, they often require approval. Certain species, especially native trees like oaks or sea grape, may need to be preserved or replaced if they're removed. And if your building plan requires regrading the yard, adding a pool, or just adjusting the footprint of the home, the town may require a landscape plan showing how you are going to restore or replace what is disturbed. These rules do exist for a reason. They help to maintain the island's natural beauty. They support wildlife habitats, and they prevent erosion, especially near the water. And while the town is strict about protecting the landscape, it's just as thoughtful about protecting the peace and the quiet of the island, especially when it comes to construction hours and noise restrictions. Longboat Key has strict construction hours and noise regulations, and there's something every buyer should understand before beginning a new build. Work is generally limited to daytime hours, so you're allowed to work between 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on the weekdays, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturdays, but Sundays and holidays, work is not allowed. These rules help preserve the peaceful residential feel of the island, especially during peak season when so many owners are here just to enjoy some quiet time. Now, off the topic of new construction builds, but I think it's important to mention it. If you're renovating within a condominium building, keep in mind that some associations restrict construction during our high season, which is typically November through April. Each building sets its own guidelines, so confirming these details during your due diligence period is essential. Now, back to new construction. For builders and buyers, these regulations mean planning is everything. Inspections, deliveries, and noisy phases of construction must be scheduled carefully, and even a small oversight can lead to a zoning officer halting the work. But when you understand the rules up front and you work with a builder who knows how to navigate them, the process moves smoothly while still honoring the island's standards. And those are 10 things most buyers may not hear about until they're already in the middle of the building process. When you understand them early, you're able to move forward with confidence instead of surprises. If you feel this content was useful, please connect with me by hitting that like and subscribe button. This lets me know to keep creating videos that guide you through the building and living on Longboat Key. With my inside track on new construction, if you ever have any questions about building here on Longboat Key, or you just want a little clarity before taking the next step, feel free to call me or text me at any time. This island is special, and making informed decisions is key to enjoying every bit of it.